You're also going to see different mosaics, like this mosaic, for instance, coming out of their exposure to different Middle Eastern architecture, their art. So they're going to pick up things as they go. For instance, they also will see that in like battle, if people are sick, they're going to quarantine. We're very familiar with quarantine right now, but if they have sick people, then they're quarantined from the healthy people. That was not something that was currently being practiced in Europe. So there's lots of different things that they're going to pick up during the Crusades. The Second Crusade, looking at this map, the Second Crusade, you have, they're going in right to the city right here is captured. And so that city, looking at our notes, of Edessa is captured. And so, again, they go in and trying to take back the city. But again, that was unsuccessful. The Third Crusade is super interesting in that, and this is the one when we were talking in England, and we were talking about King John and how King John was the leader in England because his brother was gone. Well, his brother, Richard the Lionheart, had gone from Europe and had gone from England into Jerusalem and left. And so King John took that advantage of his brother being out of the country to go ahead and take over the throne. Well, Richard is fighting the crusade in Jerusalem at this time. Also, there was a guy from Germany. His name was Frederick. Germany is located right over here. He comes in, his name's Frederick Barbarossa. So the rumor, the legend is that he hadn't had a bath in 20 years. So he gets into the water in the river and he gets in there to get clean and he has a heart attack and actually dies. So this is like the ruler of a country taking a bath and dying during battle. So that was always something that really stuck out to me. Saladin was the Muslim leader who was victorious right down here. Him and Richard had a time when they were frenemies, basically. Friends sometimes, not friends the other time. So moving on to the Fourth Crusade. The Fourth Crusade is interesting because it starts here with Pope Innocent, who was not very innocent. And he goes through and comes down into where Constantinople is, the Byzantine Empire, and actually ransacks the capital and steals all the gold, all the jewels, all the national treasures, and takes it back. So then he never actually goes to battle. All the people think he went to battle, but he really didn't. He just came in there basically to steal stuff and leave. The Fifth Crusade is always an interesting story to me because during World War I, they have this time on Christmas where everybody comes out of the trenches and they celebrate Christmas and go back to shooting each other the next day. Well, this is kind of what the battle happened during the Fifth Crusade, is that both sides were just kind of done. So they kind of pretended. It was kind of two men getting together, Frederick and I don't remember the name of the Muslim leader, and saying, well, we're just going to pretend to have a battle. We're going to come, Frederick and the Christians are going to come into Jerusalem. They're going to say they won. They're not going to kill anybody. And then the Muslims are going to decide, okay, you go home and we're done. Because neither one of them wanted to fight any longer. So I thought that one was always really interesting because it just shows that sometimes that other people want to have battle, but the people actually on the ground are just kind of done. The Sixth and Seventh Crusade are interesting because they're Louis. One of the main things we learn from the Crusades is direction. We learn how to, the Christians learn how to use compasses. They learn how to, they have more accurate maps. But it's super interesting because Louis ends up down here. He ends up down in Egypt and Tunisia. So he ends up all the way down in this area here when the Middle East is over here. So he actually never gets there. Over two different crusades, the Sixth and the Seventh Crusade, he never actually gets into Europe, into the Middle East. So I always found that one rather fascinating. The only other crusade to talk about would be the Children's Crusade. And we'll scroll down on the notes. The Children's Crusade, thousands of children gathered to march to the Holy Land. And you can imagine a bunch of kids marching into the Holy Land would be a total disaster. And tons of kids die. And many of them are never seen again and sold into slavery. So it was an utter disaster. Lessons from the Crusade. So there are several lessons for the Crusade. Number one, in the end, the unsuccessful Crusades lessened the power of the Pope and increased the power of the king. People didn't really listen to the Pope any longer. And so they were really focused on Europe's kings. So we're starting to see that, that power struggle between the Pope and the king is going back in the king's favor. Positive effect of increasing trade between Europe and those in the Middle East. There were a lot of goods that were coming when we look at the map that are coming from China. And this road, if we remember, that's called the Silk Road. And so there's a lot of goods that are coming through here that people that are coming down here from the Crusades are being exposed to. So now they know things like silk and spices, items that they really want to be able to have. Number three, greater cultural diffusion and travel benefit the population. So there's a lot more people. Populations being more populated because remember, when you have more food, you're able to have more people. The Crusades did increase tensions between the Muslim and the Christian groups. Obviously, it's a holy war, and if they're fighting each other, they're probably not going to be the best of friends. Christians learned about Muslim architecture, including domes and mosaics, which I already went over. Christians learned how to build better ships and more accurate maps. Louis could have used those maps when he ends up, instead of being here, he ends up down here. Then we have a greater desire to have Western goods. We talked about that with the Silk Road. Weakened feudalism, that there just was not a focus on as many lords and ladies and knights, that people are more, they're more middle class, more middle ground. So the feudalism is just not as important any longer. So this is a little bit about the Crusades. We went over pages 562 to 563. And after you view this video, you can go on the website to click for your options for your assignment. Have a good day.